Here's Jeff Marek, the host of The Sheet on the
Hello.
Nation Network. And normally Friday, we're taking tomorrow off. So thank you for adjusting your schedule for us. Thank you.
I did. I was wondering why I got moved to last week. I was out of town. I was traveling, so we did
Right.
the Thursday. I was wondering why I got the bump this week.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well deserved day off.
We worked Good Friday. We got to give Mike some time off here.
I
now
know.
that we have a coach hired, going to take a bit of an extra long weekend.
There are no days off in Vancouver hockey media. There's never a quiet moment.
Again, getting notes from friends, like one friend in Ottawa was like, we were in the playoffs and you guys have been busier than us in terms of content and things to cover. I'm like, yeah, that's how Vancouver rolls, man.
Vancouver is one of those markets. I mean, Toronto's the same way. Is there too much information out there about the Vancouver Canucks? Yes. And that's exactly what Vancouver Canucks fans want, just like Toronto Maple Leafs fans and Montreal Canadiens fans. Like, how many times have you heard, like, I want my MTV? It's the old saying in television. Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. They want all the information. Give me my MTV. I want all the information about those three. That doesn't change.
Is there too much information out there about the Vancouver Canucks? Yes. What do we do now? We give them more.
That's right. It's like Monty Burns. I have money and wealth beyond my wildest dreams, but I give it all up for just a little bit more.
Going to build a power plant here.
Or a power play.
That would be helpful. It was not very good last year.
No.
What do you make of Adam Foote?
It very much seemed to me, as an outsider, you're right there in the market. Like they got down to their, as one person who did have an interview with Vancouver told me, they got down to their internal candidates really quickly here. That they drilled down to Foote and Malhotra. And the one message that it seems to at least send to me is what they're trying to do is double down on a strength and really make that the accent of this team. This is, Adam Foote, and I'm sure you've heard me go on and on before about how the Hockey Hall of Fame doesn't have enough defensive defensemen in it, and Adam Foote belongs in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but that's a conversation for another day. He's done a really nice job with that blue line. Jim Rutherford, as he mentioned to Stephen Brunt in the most recent interview, happy with the goaltending. It seems as if what this does is sort of cement the message that the accent right now, as they try to sort out their forward group, is to lean into the strength, and that is the blue line. So probably should come as no surprise. And Quinn Hughes likes them. And Quinn Hughes likes them. Like we've talked about Operation Keep Quinn. Quinn likes him. I don't think we can disqualify that.
Yeah, there were a couple of very full-throated endorsements from Quinn Hughes about Adam Foote during this past campaign. The other thing that I don't think can be discounted here, Jeff, is because, you tell me, was there a case for a clean break and somebody who didn't carry any of the baggage of this past season? But that counterbalanced by Jim Rutherford at 76 years old in his last coaching hire after the season he went through, was he really going to turn it over to someone he didn't know all that well and had to learn on the job as this season went along?
We've seen this before, right? Where on the one hand, you might make the argument that, okay, clean break, fresh coat of paint with everything. But then what does it always come down to? Not just in sports and not just in hockey, but in life as well. And again, this is also something that Rutherford mentioned with Brunt, the idea that as a manager or a team president, one of the skill sets you have to have is managing upward. So whomever Jim Rutherford, Patrick Galvin wants to be behind the bench here, that's not a decision that's just made on his own. That still needs royal assent and needs, the magic wand waved over by ownership. So it becomes a matter of, okay, I need someone, A, that I think can do the job, but B, that I can sell into my ownership here. And it's a lot easier to do that when there's someone that has a track record with you. You have a past with them, as opposed to just, well, you know what? It's time we roll the dice here, boss. I can assure you, Maddie, that does not go over well when you're dealing with multi-millionaires/billionaires around the NHL. The idea of we're just going to try this and see what happens doesn't really fly.
We have been talking, Jeff, about first-time NHL head coach. His one head coaching dalliance in Kelowna did not go well. I'm not sure if you know anything about that.
Don't have it behind the
It
scenes on that.
Yeah, it would really behoove him to hire a lead assistant who has been a head coach in the
Yeah.
NHL and can sort of guide him through those new waters.
It's going to be
Concur?
interesting to see. Yeah, I don't disagree at all. It's going to be interesting to see who that person is. I'll tell you, the one person that I do wonder about, and he's kind of been outside NHL circles for a couple of years here. But Vancouver Canucks fans almost had him as a head coach before he ended up going to Edmonton, and that's Dallas Eakins, who's now coaching in Germany with Mannheim, running a really successful program there. I don't think it's any secret that Eakins would like to come back to the NHL at some point. Veteran guy, structure guy. He's a disciple of the late great Roger Nilsson. That was, as we're talking about, veteran coaches to come in to complement Adam Foote. I'll be honest with you, that is one of the places my mind went initially. And again, like there was interest previous with Dallas Eakins. I wonder if that could be rekindled here. Just a name to throw your way. What do you think about Dallas Eakins?
Really smart guy. In fact, he helped us one year host our trade deadline show. Really smart guy. I think the adage about getting better from your previous head coaching stops and learning and applying applies to Dallas. Also, his wife's an actress. At one point, she lived here in Vancouver.
Ingrid. So Ingrid.
So there
Great
are
person.
ties here. Yes, there are ties here to our city. And as you mentioned, I think interviewed with the Canucks once upon a time, a long time ago. Yeah. Hey, let me just throw this name at you because we brought it up in the first segment. Adam Foote won Stanley Cups in Colorado with Mark Crawford.
Yep.
Mark Crawford lives here on the North Shore. In fact, his son Dylan has worked for the Vancouver Canucks as the video coach. What would you think of Crow, who has actually been an assistant recently in Chicago, right? Helping out a young head coach.
Yep. Yeah. That one makes a lot of sense to me as well. Mark Crawford has done, how do we describe it? A lot of internal work as well. Like he's not someone that's let the cement harden around who he is. He's done, I think, a lot of learning, professionally and privately as well. To me, Mark Crawford, listen, as you mentioned, the success with Foote in Colorado, he has been an assistant before, probably knows that the head coaching position is not out there, right there for him, an association with the city and the province. Just sort of spinning this off the top of my head here. That one does make a lot of sense to me. The more that I'll think about it, the more I'll talk myself into saying, "Oh, I wish I would have said this to Maddie when he asked me." But it does make a lot of sense. Yes, absolutely.
The one thing with Crow, hope he's okay. He resigned in December from his job with the Swiss Zurich Lions, citing mental health reasons. You say he's done the work. He talked about, I have been investing in intensive therapy with the hopes of understanding the depths of my own mental health. So we had Crow on last year routinely as part of our playoff coverage, him breaking down the Canucks Predators and then the Canucks Oilers series. You mentioned that Brunt interview with Rutherford. I know you enjoyed it. What's stuck out for you?
I loved it. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I mean, again, in the idea of sort of being self-aware, I found, and we'll get to the Vancouver stuff in a second here, but I found his discussions with Steven about the Pittsburgh Penguins and his exit and what led up to that and how him and his family were essentially shut indoors during COVID. I mean, listen, Jim's not 25 years old anymore. We know that. And he said, his words, I was frightened. I was scared when COVID hit. And essentially he was indoors for 11 months and how much it affected him mentally. And he said something along the lines of, it went south after a conversation that, and I can't remember the exact phrase that he used for it, but it was like a conversation that I didn't do well at, or I didn't behave well at, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. We can all go back and listen to it. But he said essentially a conversation that was a byproduct of what had become of his mental health during COVID. I thought that was a moment of, clear-headed reflection just admission that, look, I messed up, and a lot of it was because I'd been locked indoors for 11 months. I'll tell you the one very relatable moment. Like this interview, it was part of it was really interesting with some interesting information, but part of it was just flat outright charming, where he talked about his wife making the charcuterie board for Francesco Aquilini. We can all picture that, right? Like, it
oh
is
my
such
God, can we ever?
it's
Yes.
such a beautiful, it's such a, like a beautiful, warm, like sort of tender. We know the exact kind of person his wife is just by saying, and she prepared a charcuterie board for Francesco Aquilini. Like, come on, like. First of all, I don't know how many people like let people into their own sort of private lives that way. And it might be to Jim, it's a throwaway sentence, but I found it incredibly charming. And it's
well, it was
real
because
disarming moment too.
As he noted, like, NHL team owners don't typically fly to your home. Usually Mohammed goes to the mountaintop. So no, he flew to his home, and then Leslie with the charcuterie board, but also that it was a 5-hour meeting, and that Francesco started by saying, "Oh, I'm not hungry," but by the end of it was gobbling up all the charcuterie.
Worked out. Yeah.
I'm guessing there's a pretty good deli there in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah. No doubt. I thought that was a charming one. By the way, I did write it down. The conversation, he said, he didn't handle well with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And now I've heard about this conversation. I don't know exactly who it was with or what the nature of the conversation was. Might have been a disagreement over a player or a situation. And we all know how Jim likes to work with autonomy. I wondered if that was one of the issues there, but nonetheless, he said he didn't handle that interview.
Yeah. Well, I also wonder if the Fenway Sports Group didn't necessarily jive with the way NHL teams have typically been managed, because, of course, they had an issue with Ron Hextall as well, right? Where they basically said, "Where's the plan?" And Hextall was like, "Well, the plan's in my head, like, it's my vision." Yeah. And they're like, "No, we need to see the plan written down." That Fenway Sports Group, of course, very big on analytics, very big on sort of data, very big on, people putting things down on paper as opposed to just governing the team by their whim.
The other thing about, and this isn't specific to the Fenway Sports Group, but how many times have you seen this, Maddie, where after a while, when things start to go south for a manager or management group, they sort of alienate themselves from the rest of the staff. Maybe sometimes there's a paranoia that comes along. Yeah. I'll tell you a story. I had a conversation with someone who said, during trade deadline in his war room, his manager instructed everybody to put their cell phones on the table because the manager wanted to know exactly who was calling and at what time, so he could see all the calls that were coming in. So, but anyway, I'm not saying that is specific to this one situation, but I'm saying more of a general point about Fenway and groups like that, and there are more of them and more coming in the NHL. They generally don't like it when you sort of close the door and don't talk to your other departments, because you're making all the decisions and you don't trust this person or this group to have this information. That doesn't fly with a group like Fenway Sports. I'm not saying that was the situation with Ron Hextall, but we've seen that happen countless times, and there'll be more. Like, that Fenway model seems to be the model for sports now. You own a team in the NFL, NBA, NHL, and you create your own, distribution network, and off to the races you go. And interesting with Pittsburgh before, with Fenway coming in, they were, the only sports operation that wasn't owned by a family. At that point, things start to change in Pittsburgh.
Oh, no question. Let me paint a scenario for you, and you tell me whether or not you think it's close to the truth. Elias Pettersson and JT Miller pop off first week of the season, as Jim Rutherford mentions.
Yep.
Miller gets benched in that November home game against Nashville. He pops off after the game with Rick Tocchet. Mm-hmm. Rick Tocchet looks around and goes, "My buddies Keith Jones and Daniel Briere are running the Flyers. Torts is probably not going to last the year. That's it. I'm out of here." Do you think you can sow the seeds of Tocchet to Philly all the way back to the beginning of this year when Miller and Pettersson started going off the rails, or am I being a little too
It would.
conspiracy?
It would. I mean, I think that it would have been part of it. I don't know that this would have been the moment where Rick Tocchet said, "I need to start looking around here and have a look at the landscape." I would be fraudulent if I said, "Yeah, that's what it was." Clearly,
No,
Matt, you're on. So, like, I think all of it was like, honestly, this was like a little sort of Hansel Grail, trail of breadcrumbs. I don't know where the first crumb was dropped. Maybe it was even seeing it the season before, despite the fact that everyone's picking up hardware and the team is great and everyone's healthy and everyone's happy. And this is the Vancouver Canucks are back. I mean, he's read the room and seen the disagreements and what the nature of the disagreements were and wondered, okay, we got through this season. Can we do it again? And then when it became obvious that this was going to be an issue again, maybe it just sort of cements what you believed the year before. Like, I sort of look at it like when you say the word retirement, part of you retires. Right? Like there comes a certain point in your career where
You mentioned that before. Yeah.
There's that moment where, like, because for the longest time, like, you're not even thinking about retirement. The minute that comes into your head, part of you already retires. And I don't know where the beginning of, I don't know, this is going to work for me here started with Rick Tocchet. And it's probably not just one thing, but it's an accumulation of all of it. I don't think it was done just exclusively with Rick Tocchet. These are life decisions you make with your family, and not just a knee jerk. Well, what, things didn't go well with the Nashville game, and I'm arguing with this guy, and he hates that guy, and the room is split, and I just got to get out of here. I still think that he's a competitor, right? And we've talked about it before. Like, I think he wanted to get through all of this and then make a decision.
Yeah, no, I don't want to say he checked out in November because I don't think he did. But I got a call in December from someone who said, Tocchet is mentioning to some confidants, this is probably going to be his last year in Vancouver. And at the time, I didn't really. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm going to take this with a grain of salt. I'm not sure I can go with this. Like, I don't know. But, now when I look back and I reflect on everything that's happened, and of course, Rutherford has given us so much of the information, I just wonder whether Rick knew some time ago that he would be moving on from the Vancouver Canucks. We're almost out of time here. It's a very busy show. But we're going to get to the Jets and the Leafs should they bow out and what happens next here in a bit.
When?
Yeah. Well,
I can't speak of the Jets, but you saw that Leafs game last night. Woo!
Well, and here's the thing.
You want to talk about checking out early. Look at that. Look at that first goal. Find me one player who engages physically with the team wearing the blue sweaters.
I saw somebody, and forgive me, who said like their dad was in town from Newfoundland and surprised them with tickets to the game, and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, what did you spend to take poor dad to that game? Because even if the Leafs win Game 6, as you know, they still lose, and they just deepen the despair with the Game 7 loss because, Jeff Marek, as we get to the Easter egg.
Oh, boy.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have lost 4 consecutive Game 7s, 3 to the Boston Bruins famously, 1 to the Montreal Canadiens unbelievably in that 2021, yes, after being up 3-1 in the series in that 2021
Gallagher goal on
Canadian division, exactly. The Toronto Maple Leafs last won a Game 7 in 2004 against the Ottawa Senators. They also won a Game 7 against the Ottawa Senators in 2002. When is the last time the Leafs won a Game 7 against a team not named the Ottawa Senators? I want the team in the year here, if you can remember.
I can't recall whether it was a Game 7 or was it a best of 5 at that point. Is that the Lanny goal on Chico Resch?
No, I thought about that one myself. I was like, damn, it's not McDonald against the Islanders way back in the late 70s, is it? It is not. In fact, they have won a good number of Game 7s since then. And, Jeff, I'm embarrassed because I covered this series and I have absolutely no recollection of this as a Game 7.
What is it?
They beat the Islanders in 2002. In Game 7, round 1.
Oh, that was right. That was when.
4-2.
Oh, that was when it was like That was a really rough series. First of all, Eric Cairns would have been playing on that Islanders team. It was like Cairns and Domi and Corson, and it was like nonstop scraps. And that was a rough one. I remember that. That's right.
That was the series where they turned in the incorrect lineup card with Reichel's name beside Renberg's number, and Reichel had to leave the bench in the first period. So that was the last time against the non-standards. They beat San Jose in Game 7 in '94 on their collision course with the Canucks in the Western Conference Final.
You'll recall, was it Garpenloff that hit the crossbar early? In that overtime, was it Johan Garpenloff that fired one? I remember Baker had one, then Garpenloff had one. Johan Garpenloff with the.
I have it as a 4-2 win here, but again, I don't have any recollection, so I don't think it was.
It was maybe not overtime. Garpenloff hit a crossbar. Maybe it was late in the third. Anyhow, my hockey brain's.
Anyways, 12-15 all time in Game 7s. They've lost 5 of their last 6. So
it is a total crisis of confidence, even if it gets to a Game 7. Like it's fun. It's funny too. We're looking at this series. The Maple Leafs go up 2-0, and then they go up 3-1 in Game 3. I was in Sunrise for that game, and we're saying like, there's no way the Florida Panthers are going to win like 4 games out of 5 here against the Toronto Maple Leafs. No chance. Now we're saying, do you think there's any chance that the Maple Leafs can win 2 games in a row against this Florida Panthers team?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with that. Bob got his game back. Bobrovsky's back. And boy, I'll tell you one thing. Leafs Twitter was a pepper patch last night. To sit from thousands of kilometers away and peer in on that conversation. Woo.
That was, hang on. That's, you know how you prime before you paint? That was the priming, right? That was just the chumming of the water. That was for what's still to come. You have no idea what's still to come when it actually happens, because that was the priming before the painting here. This is there's the old saying too, like sometimes you paint a Picasso and sometimes you paint a barn. Right now, this team is painting a barn, and you wait to see what happens. Maybe as early as Friday. It ain't going to be pretty, Matty. It ain't going to.
Well, our friend Frank Corrado likes to say Canucks Twitter is undefeated. Leafs Twitter is winless, and that was evident last night. If you dared to surf into the deep recesses of it.
Spectacular.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff.
Thanks,
enjoy the playoffs over the weekend. We'll catch them next week, buddy.
All right, be good. Talk in 7 days.
Thank you.